Hey, Damian Mason coming at you with a discussion about bacon, pork shortages, California, and agricultural economic reality meets feel-good ballot initiatives for the consumer that ultimately has to pay for the feel-good initiatives. I'm talking about proposition number 12, and it's been talked about a lot here in the last couple of days. NPR ran this story, Associated Press had one. Folks said, Damian, can you tell us what's really going on with California and pork? So I'm giving you this video to share with your non-agricultural friends, people who eat, and anybody else that should be interested in my explanation. So what happened? In 2018, California voters were faced with a proposition. It is the Farm Animal Confinement Proposition, or Proposition 12. And it said that, among other things, chicken pens and veal calf pens and pig pens are going to have to be of a certain square footage to give the piggies more room to move about. California produces a lot of eggs and chickens, so that industry actually has to comply. Almost no veal calves are in California, and almost no pigs are in California. The pigs are produced in places like Minnesota, Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, North Carolina, where we grow pigs. The law states not just animals that are raised in California, it's any pork product that is sold in California. So de facto, the animal rights organizations that got Proposition 12 on the ballot are creating a national standard because California consumes 15% of the nation's pork, with only 13% of the nation's population. Turns out a lot of ethnic groups that eat pork as their number one protein, Asians and Hispanics, make California their home. So they're a pretty good consumer of pork. What's going to be the result? Well, out here in agriculture world, we're going to have to decide, do we even sell our stuff to California? Now, the reality is, when you're a huge hog producer, your pigs go to a Tyson plant or a JBS plant or name the meat processor, and then where they go from there, you don't really know. But the packing processors are going to then start going to the producers and saying, you need to comply. 24 square foot per sow, which means you've got to change out all these pens. Who's going to absorb that cost? Imagine if you went to, say, a factory and said, hey, from this point forward, you can produce those widgets, but guess what? You need to have 24 square foot per widget. You say, but right now I'm giving my widgets 18 square feet. That's not going to work. So who pays for the cost of rearranging and redeveloping the widget factory? That's going to be the issue on all the hog farms. What does it mean? It means that some small hog farms might go out of business if they don't have the capital resources to do all this retrofitting, or they might say we can't afford this, or we can't even sell to California, or they might lose their market. Still remains unseen. Interesting that the animal do-gooders always talk about small farms and those evil factory farms, yet they push through legislation that tends to favor economies of scale and larger, more capitalized farming operations, the ones that then could go through and change out all the pens in all 100 barns that they might have. What's it mean for the consumer? It means that in California, there probably really might be some shortages come January, or the shortage will last for about a week. All of a sudden, when Mrs. Kim, the restaurateur in San Francisco, can't get bacon to feed her diners, and she says, guess what? It's because of California Proposition 12. All those voters in San Francisco that felt so good when they drove their Tesla to the balloting station, and they went in there and they signed in their name, and they said, I am going to vote against those confinement pens on those factory farms, and they drove off in their Tesla to go and get breakfast at Mrs. Kim's restaurant, and now they can't get bacon. They're going to say, well, who voted for that? I just voted for bigger pens. I didn't vote for a shortage of bacon. Agricultural economic reality. When you restrict supply and production and demand stays the same, prices go through the roof, or we even have shortages. Who does this hurt? It hurts poorer consumers. The Tesla-driving, tofu-eating San Franciscan feels as though they've just saved the world by giving pigs bigger pens. But their landscaper, the poor Hispanic person that's trying to feed his or her family that lives on a much more meager income than the Tesla driver, is going to pay an outsized price. Generally, food inflation and food price increases exponentially hurt poorer people who spend more of their percentage of their income on food. So we're going to change production probably throughout the country. The animal rights activist groups have learned that they can pass a de facto national law by simply getting Californians to vote for one of their feel-good laws. So the propaganda, the imagery on TV of mistreated pigs, and which doesn't really happen, and showing animals in a small pen, then they push that legislation and it becomes a national law. So we've got poor consumers being hurt, a distortion to the marketplace that was not going to happen. We were doing just fine supplying California pork, so it's an artificial distortion. Poor consumers are going to pay more for the product. There could be some shortages or some big disruptions in the short term, and in general, we're going to change a bunch of how we produce things in places like here in Indiana. But it won't be final, because the animal rights organizations actually want you to not eat pork. They want you to not eat meat. They want there to not be livestock farms. So every 2 to 4 years, there will be a new proposition on the California ballot. That again, through propaganda, you can tell the consumer you're doing the right thing because you're giving all those piggies the space. But what they really want to have happen is fundraising to come in for the animal rights organization. And they eventually want to make it so hard to produce protein that, you know what, we just give up. Or it becomes so expensive that consumers switch over to tofu. And that's the goal. Damian Mason, I'm the author of Food Fear, a book about the business of food, the politics of food, as well as the past, present, and future of agriculture. If you've not picked up your copy, please do so. Happy to shed some light on what Proposition 12's reality will do. I would say if you live in California, better load your freezer up with some bacon between now and January 1st, because things are going to get a little tight. You thought toilet paper was a struggle. Whoo, wait until you get pork chops. Talk to you later. Thanks for joining me. Look for more of my stuff on YouTube, and please hit subscribe to the Damian Mason channel.